You felt it. 7 months, 210 days of a silence that seemed like it had come to stay. There were moments during that long hiatus when you looked at the horizon of your own life and found nothing but a thick fog, an absence of signs that made you question whether the path you were walking was still, in fact, yours. Do you remember the exact date when you felt the connection was severed? It wasn't an external event, not a catastrophic loss that made headlines. It was something much deeper and quieter. It was a disappearance of meaning. You felt as if someone had moved the ground beneath your feet while you were sleeping, and now, on this Monday, something inside you awakens with a clarity that startles you. You feel that what left, what withdrew into the shadows of your biography all these months, is about to return. But it doesn't come back the same way. What returns now has changed the course of your destiny. For a long time, you believed this hiatus was a sign of a detour, a punishment, or at best a gear failure. You will understand why these 7 months were not a time of passive waiting, but a time of marking time. You will recognize what happened in the hidden depths of your soul during that interval, and you will understand why the return you now feel carries an undeniable mark of selection. You are not just picking up where you left off. You are being called into a cycle for which you were prepared in the dark. Stay with me, because what I am about to reveal to you is the reason why you felt countless times that you no longer belonged where you were, but still didn't know where to go. Let's look at the symptoms, because you are not imagining things. Over the last 210 days, you lived an invisibility that hurt. You tried, you searched, you tried to keep the flame alive, but it seemed the world around you couldn't see you. You spoke and felt the sound was absorbed by the void. You tried to build something, and the material seemed to crumble between your fingers. You know that feeling of knocking on a door that used to open easily, but now seems sealed with lead. That was the first sign. The second was that sudden emptiness, a strangeness with the people who had always been by your side, as if you were watching a... Attention! You need to prepare yourself now. I have prepared material for those who doubt their own calling from God and still do not have confirmation. Are you one of the chosen? We'll give you that clarity. These are the 7 signs of the language of the calling, marks of God in the story of every chosen one, so you can reread your story and recognize the purpose sealed over you before the foundation of the world. Stop calling coincidence what is actually a calling. Stop silencing the sacred restlessness. Stop postponing the answer you feel. Your window is closing, and a chosen one who does not recognize the calling does not walk in purpose. More than 10,000 people have already read the 7 signs and received the conviction they had been seeking for years. They were just like you. They felt something no one understood. They lived in silent doubt, and they discovered it was real. And it had a name. The offer is open only this month. Access the link in the pinned comment now, before doubt steals another year from your calling. A movie where you no longer recognize the actors. You began to prefer silence, not out of isolation, but because the external noise became unbearable for the frequency you started to emit. You may have interpreted this as exhaustion, as discouragement, or even as a personal defeat. But I am here to tell you that this invisibility was a protection. You were put into a period of latency because if you had continued at that pace, with that mindset, and with those connections, you would have lost who you were born to be. The emptiness you felt was the space necessary for the transition. Nothing was lost in these 7 months. Everything was gathered back to be refined. Your fingers typing those 3 numbers are your signature on a silent agreement. It is your way of saying that you accept that your pause was not a mistake, but a preparation. It is the recognition that the frequency has changed, and that you are aligned with what is about to emerge. Type 888, and then come straight back to me. There is still a deeper layer beneath this recognition. You need to understand that what is returning is not just what you left behind. What returns is a version of you that was forged in what no one saw. While everyone thought you were stagnant, your inner self was being reorganized by an intelligence that transcends human logic. You were not being forgotten by destiny, you were being kept by it. The time you spent in obscurity, feeling invisible, was the time it took for your roots to reach a depth you would not have achieved if you had stayed on the surface, picking premature fruit. Many times, our greatest frustration comes from trying to force a return before the seed has finished its time underground. You felt the urgency to come back, but now, with the distance of someone looking back at the past, you can see that if you had returned 3 or 4 months ago, you would have come back with the same baggage, the same fear, and the same limited vision. The diagnosis of this absence is clear. You were removed from the scene so that your essence could be restored. There was no abandonment. There was a strategic withdrawal. And the great revelation that hangs over this moment is that from today forward, you no longer operate by the force of your will, but by the authority of your selection. You notice that when we look at your trajectory, each crisis of the past few months served only to remove what was superfluous. The friendships that drifted away, the opportunities that failed, the plans that fell apart. All of that was an act of pruning. You were pruned so that your next harvest would be not just abundant, but eternal. What returns now is not your old life. It is your redeemed life. And you feel this change in your bones, don't you? It's a vibration, a hum that happens at the base of your neck when you think about what's ahead. You are not anxious like before. You are expectant. There is a vast difference between anxiety that tries to control the future and expectation that trusts what is already complete. You left anxiety and entered certainty. You stopped trying to convince the world of your worth and began living from the worth that has already been given to you. That is the great secret of your return. The world doesn't have to give you what you already possess. It only has to recognize who you became during the time you were hidden. The diagnosis of your absence is not a verdict of failure. It is a recognition of purpose. For 210 days you walked through a desert that, to an outsider's eyes, looked like a mistake, an unwanted pause, or perhaps the silence of someone who had been forgotten. But for the one who lives in your skin, the truth is radically different. You were not punished by the silence. You were prepared by it. There is an invisible law that governs the cycles of existence. Nothing can rise to a new level of authority without first being subjected to a period of deep quiet. What you lived through was a strategic withdrawal, a time when your life was placed in a state of dormancy, not to die, but to conserve the energy needed for the leap you're about to make. Many times, our greatest pain comes from trying to maintain speed when destiny demands we stop. You tried to run, tried to force things, tried to open doors with the same keys you had used for years, but they wouldn't turn. And you felt deep in your chest that it wasn't from a lack of competence. It was because the very configuration of your path had changed. The pause was not abandonment. It was the removal of your hand from the steering wheel, so that a greater direction could take control. During this time you learned, perhaps without realizing it, that your identity no longer depends on the results you produce, nor the titles you hold, nor the approval you beg for. You were stripped of everything superfluous, so that in this moment of return you could carry only what is essential. The pattern that governed your life before these 7 months was based on the need to prove something. You operated as if you were always in debt to life, always running to reach a goal that moved every time you took a step. But this 7-month wait served to cleanse what was not authentic. All the connections that would not bear the weight of your new phase were cut, not out of cruelty but out of preservation. All the beliefs that limited your vision were dissolved in the silence of your invisibility. You now realize that what left was not a loss, it was a relief. What was taken away was not a privilege, it was a burden that was preventing your walk from reaching the cruising speed your destiny demands. Imagine now, with me, a garden in the dead of winter. Look at the soil. It looks dead, dry, inactive. To a hurried observer, that soil has no more use. It produces no flowers, offers no fruit, puts on no spectacle of color and life. But what the observer doesn't see is what happens below the surface. In the intense cold, in the absolute silence of winter, the soil is working. The roots are deepening, reaching for minerals that were previously out of reach. The silence of the garden is not the silence of the end. It is the silence of preparation for a harvest that no other garden could offer. You are that garden. The past few months were your winter. You were kept under a blanket of snow that protected you from storms, allowing your internal structure to become solid, resilient, able to bear the weight of the glory that is coming. Do not try to rush the sprouting of the seed. The sun is already beginning to change its angle. The light is shifting. The temperature is rising. What you experienced was the compression of the spring that, when released, will launch you to a height you never imagined you could reach. You are not the same person who started this process. Your voice has changed. Your gaze has changed. The way you perceive the world is no longer that of a victim of destiny, but of a conscious participant in your own unfolding. The soil, after a harsh winter, is far more fertile than soil that was never tested. You are stronger, more aware, and above all, more ready than ever before. Let that recognition settle where it needs to settle. The act of writing these 3 words is your commitment that you will no longer fight against the timing of your own expansion. Type now, with the certainty of one who knows the winter is over, and then come straight back to me. Now understand the weight of this transition. The person who left 7 months ago is not returning. That version of you who walked carrying doubts, who felt responsible for results that were not in your hands, that person stayed back there in those weeks of shadow and silence. What returns now is a filtered essence, a being who has understood that identity does not reside in what you do, but in what you sustain. You are not returning to the same place. You are returning to the same space, but with a level of authority that was previously foreign to you. Your return is not a repetition of a cycle, it is an elevation in level. What happened in those 210 days of perceived absence was a reconfiguration of your very soul structure. You were disconnected from everything superfluous, from all the connections that drained your energy, so that you could be filled with a clarity that can only be accessed in absolute solitude. Breathe deeply. Let this awareness penetrate every cell of your being. You were not forgotten. You were kept. You were not abandoned. You were hidden so that you would not be corrupted before the time of your unveiling. The movement you feel now, this impulse to walk again, to resume your projects and present yourself to the world, is not an initiative based on fear or the need for approval. It is a calling. It is the response to your own readiness. And this authority, this new way of carrying yourself, is the final proof that the winter fulfilled its role. If you feel deep in your chest that this truth resonates with the real experience you have been living, let your gesture be a form of sacred recognition. Do not think of it as a social media metric, nor as a search for numbers. Consider your like as a wordless amen. It is your seal that what has been named here is the truth of your own path. It is your silent agreement with your own story, acknowledging that yes, the time of rest was the time of preparation for what now begins. By confirming this, you stop being a spectator of your own life and become the conscious protagonist of your new phase. There is, in this exact moment, someone who inhabits your thoughts. Perhaps someone you have watched wither over the past few months. Someone who seems to be carrying the world on their shoulders without saying a single word about the pain they feel. Picture that person's face. They have a look that carries an exhaustion not from work, but from the soul. They have the posture of someone waiting for something that never arrives, someone who feels quietly invisible, as if life had passed them by without noticing. That person does not need advice or preaching or someone trying to fix them. They need a sign. They need to know that the winter they are going through also has an expiration date. Send this content to them. Do not do it as someone recommending a video or pointing out a channel. Do it as someone delivering a message that was entrusted to you to reach them. What you received today is not your possession, it is a service. The same care that destiny had for you by keeping you in silence to strengthen you is the care you must have for them now by sending this word of confirmation. There is an invisible movement taking place in you right now. The transition is not something you do. It is something you allow. You are leaving the waiting phase and entering the manifestation phase. The one who hid for months now returns with the weight of experience and the lightness of someone who no longer has anything to prove to the world. You have discovered that your legitimacy does not depend on the observation of others, but on the certainty you carry at the center of your being. What comes next is not an effort. It is a natural unfolding of who you have become. You are ready. Your frequency has changed. Your vision is adjusted to see what was previously impossible to see. And this awareness of being present, of being the bearer of a new seed, is what defines your definitive entry into this new chapter. What you carried in secret will now be your public strength. What was forged in the fire of absence will now be the light that guides the next steps. Nothing will ever be the same because you, in your essence, are no longer the same. Before we close this encounter, there is one last step you must take. It is not a task, nor an external commitment. It is a reaffirmation of where you now stand after everything that has been revealed. I want you to take a deep breath and feel the truth of every word that will compose this declaration. This is not a hope, nor a vague wish. It is the recognition of the authority that was restored in you during this period of silence and waiting. When you speak it, even if only in thought or by typing, you are cementing a new reality that cannot be undone. Do not write these words as someone asking for permission, but as someone signing a deed of ownership. Type them slowly, feeling each letter, allowing your mind to accept what your spirit already recognized long ago. This act of typing is the final seal, the mark you leave in the record of your own history, consolidating the identity shift that happened over the past 7 months. You are no longer the person who lived according to the opinions of others. You are no longer the person who begged for attention or recognition. You are the one who was prepared in the desert, forged in anonymity, and now returns with the clarity of someone who understands their true purpose. You are committed to the truth that now pulses at your core. You are commissioned to live according to this new light that cuts through the shadows of the past. You are sent to occupy the space that has always been yours, with the authority of someone who does not need applause to know who they are. What you lived through was not a waste of time. It was the building of your foundation. The stillness you felt was not a wrong turn, nor a distancing from your essence. For 210 days, your life seemed to be in a waiting room where time did not obey the hands of the clock. You looked around and saw the constant movement of others, other people's achievements, the noise of progress, and you wondered why your own horizon seemed stagnant. That perception of invisibility, of being a shadow that walks among the living without being noticed, was your greatest school. If you felt that isolation, if your soul carried the weight of being the only person to perceive that something far greater was being cooked in the silence, I want you to take a small pause now. Breathe deeply and feel the air moving through your being. If this recognition touched your chest, if the pain of being forgotten has finally turned into understanding, type the number 888 down below. This code, this sequence, is the signature of your transition. By typing 888, you are telling the universe that you accept the frequency of change, that you understand the pause is over, and that your return is not just a coming back. It is a strategic repositioning. Type 888, then turn your attention back to me. What happened while you were absent was not a punishment, it was a pruning. When the earth needs a new harvest, it does not bloom all year long. It needs a winter, a time when the sap descends to the root. You were nourishing the root, strengthening what no one could see, building the foundation that will support your new level. The diagnosis of your apparent absence is, in truth, a certificate of readiness. Those who do not understand the cycles, who live in the rush to harvest without ever having planted, would never understand your process. But you, who endured the loneliness, who endured the emptiness and the silence, you understand. The pattern you kept repeating, that exhausting effort to force doors that were locked by a higher protection, has finally been broken. You stopped pulling on ropes that were no longer attached to anything. That perception that the waiting served to clean out what was not authentic is the master key that opens the new cycle. Imagine now a vast garden in full rest. The vibrant colors of summer have given way to the necessary gray, to the silence that precedes blooming. It is in this ground that your story is being written. The soil that needs silence is the same soil that, when the season changes, produces the sweetest, most resilient fruit. Your life is going through exactly that. It is not a rush. It is a realization. It is your consciousness declaring that the dormancy period is over and that your structure is finally prepared for the light of the new season. By typing, "I am ready," you seal your commitment to what comes next. Do it now. Feel the weight of those words, and then return to our connection. You who return today, on this Monday, are not the same person who withdrew 7 months ago. The person who left was seeking validation, searching for a place that did not belong to you. The person who returns now has a different gaze, a steadier step, a presence that needs no fanfare to be felt. You have learned the art of being, while others still concern themselves only with doing. When you realize that your very essence is your greatest credential, the world begins to align with your needs, without you having to ask. Your return is marked by a silent authority. If you feel that your inner truth now echoes more powerfully than all the external voices that try to silence you, allow your approval to be made manifest. Let your like be your wordless amen. Not as a tally of numbers, but as a solemn confirmation that what was spoken here has found a home in your soul. This agreement is the sign that the frequency between what I transmit and what you live is perfectly tuned. There is someone who has walked this exact same crossing that you have. Look at your mind now and notice the face that arises. That person who appeared, who has also maintained a deep silence, who seems to be in a voluntary exile, feeling invisible while carrying a latent strength the world has yet to see. They need to know they are not alone. That person who works hard, who maintains dignity even when no one is watching, who carries the same mark of election that you recognize in yourself. Send this message to them. The same key that unlocked your new cycle may be what they need to understand their own journey. Be the messenger of that relief for someone still in the middle of the process, awaiting their own rebirth. What you received is not meant to be kept. It is meant to be expanded through your own lived experience. The cycle that closes today is not just a marker of time. It is the evidence of a deep preparation that no one around you could understand, because it happened entirely within your invisible structure. You carried this silence for 7 months, the way one carries a seed that needs total darkness to germinate. The outside world kept on with its rush, focusing on the surface, but you were being forged in a fire that does not consume, only refines. What you lived through was not a hiatus. It was an intensive course in alignment with your purest truth. When you felt invisible during those 210 days, You were actually being shielded from distractions that were not aligned with your true destiny. Now the veil lifts, and the clarity you so sought is the very essence you have become. This Monday marks the point of return, where what was hidden becomes manifest, and your presence will now occupy the space that was always meant for you. Before this moment dissipates into the flow of your daily life, we need to place the final seal on what has been recognized. Your identity is no longer a search. It is a reality you inhabit. Type the words, "I am the chosen one," in the comments below. Do not do it out of impulse, but with the conviction of one who recognizes their own trajectory, their own winter overcome, and their own harvest beginning to sprout. By writing this, you sign a contract with your own consciousness that you will not go back to the old ways, the old doubts, or the need for others' approval. You are the very answer you were waiting for. You are committed, you are commissioned, you are sent. Your journey belongs to no one else, and your light does not depend on the permission of any environment to shine with the intensity that was granted to you from the beginning. Everything you lived through, every day of uncertainty, every minute of silence was a necessary piece for the mosaic that now reveals itself complete before your eyes. At this very moment, in every corner of the world, others are hearing these exact same words and feeling this same vibration of return and renewed authority. You are part of a quiet movement that needs no fanfare to be transformative, because its strength lies precisely in that stillness you now master. You are not alone on this crossing. You are accompanied by a lineage of seekers who, like you, learned to trust the process when everything seemed stagnant. Your clarity is their clarity, and your return is the proof that winter always, without exception, gives way to spring. It is sealed. Attention! You need to prepare yourself now. I have prepared material for those who doubt their own calling from God and still do not have confirmation. Are you one of the chosen? We'll give you that clarity. These are the 7 signs of the language of the calling, marks of God in the story of every chosen one, so you can reread your story and recognize the purpose sealed over you before the foundation of the world. Stop calling coincidence what is actually a calling. Stop silencing the sacred restlessness. Stop postponing the answer you feel. Your window is closing, and a chosen one who does not recognize the calling does not walk in purpose. More than 10,000 people have already read the 7 signs and received the conviction they had been seeking for years. They were just like you. They felt something no one understood. They lived in silent doubt, and they discovered it was real. And it had a name. The offer is open only this month. Access the link in the pinned comment now before doubt steals another year from your calling.